Everything ends, friend. The body, the breath, even the darkness itself. But the way it ends is never the same. Hello and welcome to Torches, Yoga and Mindfulness. I'm Lauren, and today I have for you our finale, the last story of the Stillness in the Dark, Season 1. Because have no fear, this was too fun to put an end to. I'm not certain when I'll come back with a new season or what it'll be about, but just know I am not done with this new genre we have created here. Some endings feel like fire clawing and tearing at the skin, others like silence unfolding slowly without a ripple. Today's story will show us both, not through strangers, but through two souls who were bound from the start, two who walked the same path into the darkness, two who stood side by side when the world began to fracture, two who would face the same ending in two very different ways. We are exploring the eighth and final skill of mindfulness today, and that is equanimity. So, grab a snack, sit back while I tell you the tale of Damien and Lucian. This tale begins not in shadow, but in promise. Lucian and Damien grew up in privilege, though not of noble blood. Their father was a successful merchant dealing in textiles and fine steel, traveling often with caravans that brushed the shoulders with knights, squires, and hardened men of the sword. From an early age, the brothers trained, not for necessity, but for stature, sparring under the eye of a retired knight their father kept in his employ, learning how to wield both blade and wit in equal measure. Lucian, the elder by minutes, seemed destined for greatness, broad of shoulder, quick of mind, and possessed of a charisma that drew people in as moths to a flame. He became an apprentice under a respected tactician in the king's service. Already murmurs swirled that Lucian's path would lead to command, perhaps even knighthood. His every step carried the assurance of someone who believed the world would unfold neatly before him. Damien, quieter, was no less skilled. His blade work, though less flashy, was precise. His strategies, though spoken rarely, bore a sharpness his tutors could not dismiss. Yet, where Lucian basked in light, Damien seemed always in shadow. He forged his own way, choosing to accompany caravans on treacherous routes, walking among mercenaries and wanderers instead of courtiers. His clothes were plainer, his speech less polished, but those who fought beside him knew his reliability ran deeper than gold. Love, however, revealed the greatest fracture between them. Both had found their hearts ensnared by the same young woman, a healer's daughter named Selene. Dark hair and sharp-eyed, she carried herself with a quiet strength that mirrored Damien's own, yet it was Lucian who won her. Their courtship was a whirlwind of dances beneath torchlight, stolen kisses in the moonlit gardens, and promises whispered with the fever of youth. Damien said nothing. He smiled at his brother's happiness, even offered counsel when Lucian's impatience or pride threatened the delicate bond. But in the stillness of night, he felt the weight of longing settle in his chest like a stone. He carried it silently, as he did most things, burying it beneath layers of discipline and restraint. And yet, the bond between the brothers held firm. They trained together still, sparred with equal ferocity, laughed over cups of mead after long days of duty. To any who watched, they were inseparable. Two sons of promise, two halves of the same whole. No one could have guessed that when the horror came, those same halves would split, one to agony and one to stillness. It was a late autumn night when everything changed. That evening came dressed in silence so complete it felt as though the world itself held its breath. The village had already folded into sleep, candles snuffed, shutters barred. Beyond the stone walls of their father's manor, the forest leaned closer, its branches skeletal against a swollen harvest moon. The brothers were at home, firelight flickering in the manor hall, when the first sound came, a scraping at the gate, like claws dragging over iron, then silence. Then again it came louder. They exchanged a glance, half question, half fear, and rose together. At first it was faint, a groaning moan, like timber bowing under strain, but it was not the forest wind. It carried weight, grief, hunger. The hounds chained by the gate began to whimper and press their tails tight between their legs. Lucian descended quickly, half smiling still, though a crease had formed between his brows. Wolves, perhaps? He said, though his voice betrayed a sliver of doubt. Damien said nothing, but the hair on the nape of his neck rose like bristles. They went to the gate with swords drawn. The hinges groaned as Lucian shoved it open, and the torchlight spilled across the path. The moan stretched again, closer now, wrapping the air around them. It was not the sound of wolves. And then it came. A figure stumbling from the tree line. What stood beyond was no man, no beast. Its skin clung in strips of grayish ash, its eyes wide and empty, its mouth working as though chewing words it could not form. Damien could not stop staring at the mouth. The frequency it emanated crawled into his ears, blooming in his cranium, a thistle of whispering syllables. He heard nothing and everything all at once, resonance, growls, and voices muttering a language lost to time. He felt his breath vanish. His hand shook on the hilt. Lucian, in contrast, became still, not frozen, but deliberate. His breath slowed, his eyes sharpened as if he had trained for this moment his entire life. The creature lurched forward, and they fought side by side, blades ringing against bone that cracked but did not bleed. Lucian met it with a clean strike, steel ringing as it cut into brittle flesh. The thing staggered but did not fall. Damien swung too, his blade glancing off his shoulder. The impact rattled his arms and left his grip weak. The creature twisted towards him, its mouth opening wide in a soundless scream. Hold! Lucian barked, stepping in front of his brother. His sword carved again, this time through the thing's chest. It toppled, writhing, before collapsing into a heap of ash. For one breath, silence. Then from the trees came more scraping, more claws, dozens. They're coming, Damien whispered. They've already come, Lucian answered. We move. The brothers fled down the road toward the town, boots pounding the dirt. At first they thought the streets would be safe, but when they reached the square, the world tilted. A bell rang just once, and then silence. And in that instant, the town was gone. Doors hung open, lamps still burning, meals half eaten on tables, but every soul had vanished. The night unraveled itself one stitch at a time. At the first hedgerow, the crows were lined in a row along the top, all facing the same way, heads tucked, too still, even for crows. Damien lifted the torch closer. They were not asleep. Their eyes open and glassed, beaks slightly parted as if to drink. No breath fogged the air before them. At the well, the rope hung wet, the bucket resting suspended above the dark depths. The water looked thick, skinning over like a cooling gravy. Lucian touched the rope. It hummed under his fingers like the plucked string of a guitar. He stilled it with the palm, and it kept humming. At the baker's, flour lay in drifts across the threshold like new snow, but no footprints crossed it. The door was open to a room that looked frozen in a moment, a loaf of bread half sliced, knife still jutting out, set on the cutting board. The church tower stood at the heart of the village, squat and stony, a finger raised to the sky in warning. The building quiet, the rope in the bell tower hung motionless through the open hatch. No hand had touched it. Damien's stomach dropped, his knees buckled. He stumbled into Celine's house, calling her name, his voice echoing back to him like mockery. Every room was empty, only her scarf, caught on the window, swayed in the night's wind. Lucian stood at the threshold. His face was calm, his sword still loose in his hand. "She's not here," he said softly. Lucian's breath stayed slow. Inhale, exhale. The movement in his chest was a metronome set to mercy. Damien watched the rise and fall and tried to anchor his own body to it. For a beat or two it worked. Then it slipped again. Damien's chest heaved. "Where is she? Where is anyone?" His voice cracked with rage and panic. The scraping returned. From the alleys, from the edges of the square, figures emerged. Ashen bodies, mouths twitching, eyes blank. Not one or two, dozens. An army of the dead, silent except for the rasp of claw on stone. Lucian gripped his brother's arm. "Run!" Beyond the village, the path cut through the trees, a route they had taken 100 times as boys, daring each other into the cool shade to prove who feared the darkness less. The chapel was little more than a stone box with a door, long abandoned to the ivy and memories. Celine had tended herbs around it in summer. It was where she went to be alone and to listen. They stepped out onto the lane. The bell didn't strike again. The sky felt slightly wrong, as if someone had moved it half a degree to the left while no one was looking. They plunged into the forest, branches whipping against their faces. The creatures followed, their shapes weaving between trees, always just out of reach, always too many to count. The deeper they ran, the darker it grew. To Damien, the forest was alive with terror. He saw faces in the bark, eyes staring from the branches, mouths whispering his name. Every crack of a twig made him flinch. Every shadow was Celine's face, twisted, accusing, dissolving into ash when she blinked. His world was collapsing, and he could not escape it. But Lucian, he moved differently. He breathed evenly, each step measured, his eyes scanning but not clinging. He saw the same shadows, the same shapes at the edge of sight, but he did not give them more than they were. To him, the forest still was a forest. Dangerous tonight, yes, but only that. The hum began low, almost like a swarm of bees buried deep in the earth. Then it grew louder, deeper, until the ground shook beneath them. Roots tore from the soil, trees toppled, the air shimmered as if the world itself were dissolving. Damien stumbled, clutching his ears. His vision split, the sky above ripped like fabric, rivers of fire bleeding through. He saw Celine's body among the creatures, her face hollow, her arms reaching for him. He wept and begged, clawed at the ground, screaming for it to stop. Lucian knelt beside him, a steady hand on his shoulder. He looked up at the same sky. He heard the same hum, but what he saw was vastness, not fire. The stars shone steady. The night was whole. His breath rose and fell, anchoring him as the world shuddered. Shapes broke through the trees. 5, 10, 20 creatures, their jaws snapping, their fingers curling like hooks. Damien saw monsters, endless and multiplying. Lucian saw only what stood before him. He lifted his sword, not in rage, not in fear, but in readiness. Each swing was precise, each step deliberate. Where Damien's strikes were wild, Lucian's were clean. Where Damien's breath choked, Lucian's remained slow and even. At last, through the breaking trees, the chapel appeared. Its spire cracked, its door ajar, light spilling faintly from within. As they approached the chapel, the world seemed to further unravel itself, like the sky forgot how to hold itself up, the earth unable to hold itself together. The hum intensified, rattling everything apart. Lucian stood steady, sword lowered but ready. For him, this storm was something to meet, to witness, and nothing more. They staggered inside, candles still burning on the altar, though no priest remained. The air was thick with incense, or perhaps only the memory of it. And there, standing in the glow, was Celine. Damien cried out and ran to her, collapsing at her feet. Celine turned, her eyes wide, her lips parting as if to speak his name. For a heartbeat, he felt the warmth of her hand on his cheek, and hope surged through him. Then her face split, skin flaked away, her hair withered into smoke, and her body collapsed into ash. Her mouth gaped, shrieking, jagged teeth snapping inches from his skin. He stumbled backward, sobbing her name, choking on dust that burned his throat. Lucian stepped forward, sword lowered. What he saw was not Celine, but a shape of fear, shadow and dust, nothing more. He bowed his head, pressed his hand to his chest, and breathed. His breath was steady, his focus unwavering. The shriek faltered, and the phantom dissolved into silence. But for Damien, the nightmare had only deepened. The chapel groaned, timbers splitting, stone quaking beneath his knees. The floor yawned open into a jagged crack, wide and bottomless. Cold air clawed up from the depths, pulling at him. He scrambled, flailing, his hands slipping on loose stones as he tried to claw his way back up. Damien! Lucian shouted, lunging forward, arms outstretched. But Damien's eyes were wild, clouded by panic. He didn't see his brother's outreached hand, didn't hear his voice. He only heard the whispers, screaming now in a language that burned his mind. He kicked, he fought, but every motion dragged him closer to the edge. For a final, frozen instant, Damien's gaze found Lucian's, terror meeting calm. Then the earth swallowed him whole. His screams echoed off the chapel walls, raw and endless, before it was cut short, devoured by the dark. And then stillness. The crack sealed as though it had never been. For Lucian, the chapel stood empty, quiet and unmoved. His breath came and went like a tide. He stood alone in the silence, steady. The hum faded from the world. Two brothers, one storm, one undone by terror, the other held by equanimity. And when the stillness came at last, it was Lucian who remained standing. All right, my friend, that is my story for you this week. Two brothers standing side by side in the same storm, one consumed by panic until the earth itself swallowed him, the other steady in the very same place, breathing, watching, and unshaken. This is equanimity. It does not change the world outside of us. It changes the way we meet it. The storm may still rage, the cracks may still open, the shadows may still whisper, but equanimity is the ground we stand on when the earth itself feels like it's breaking apart. Lucian could not stop what came. He could not silence the bell or seal the fissures in the earth, but he could remain present. He could breathe, and in doing so, he saw clearly where his brother was lost in terror. And that's the heart of equanimity. It's not indifference. It's not coldness. It's not pretending that the storm isn't there. It's being so rooted in presence that even when the storm comes, we can stand, breathe, and see it for what it is. So, friend, I ask you, when the storms of your own life rise, will you meet them with panic, clawing at what you cannot hold? Or will you pause, steady yourself, and breathe? Because the world will always unravel, darkness will always whisper, but equanimity allows us to meet it all with clarity, courage, and calm. That is stillness in the dark. That is the gift of equanimity. Okay, friend, if you're just hopping into this series, have no fear. Now you can binge all 8 of them. I have them tucked nice and neatly in a playlist right on my page for you to find. Make sure you like and subscribe before you head out. And thank you so much for sharing a piece of your day with me, friend. Stay present, stay kind to yourself, and I will see you soon.